to section 2, the Vedas of this module about Indian languages and literature. And we are talking about Sanskrit. The Vedas, they are divine revelations, that which has been received. That's why they are also called as Shruti, which means what is heard. The Vedas are the treasure house of knowledge, not merely spiritual, but also scientific, cultural, and material. It was Krishna Dvaipayana, this sage. We spoke about him in the earlier section. He categorized them to 4 divisions. The word Vyasa means division. That's how he came to be called as Veda Vyasa. Now the 4 divisions are Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. The language Sanskrit originated from the Vedas, is derived from the root word vid. Vid in Sanskrit means to know. Veda also means knowledge. Vedas are also called as apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means not of human origin. They are called as received knowledge because it is not written by or composed by any human. They were received by the sages and seers in their meditation or in their communion with the God, what we call as Brahman in Sanskrit. Now, let us look at the various divisions under the Vedas. As we said earlier, the Vedas are divided into 4. We already saw the 4 divisions. The Rig, Yajur, Sama, and the Atharva Veda. The earliest known literature of the world is the Rig Veda. The universally famous Gayatri Mantra is present in this Rig Veda. The Yajur Veda prescribes the procedures to be adopted at the time of performing various different sacrifices or procedures or yajna procedures. The Sama Veda helps in tracing the history of Indian music. The Atharva Veda is entirely different from the other 3 Vedas in the content and in its style. It is the latest of the 4 Vedas, and each of these Vedas are either called Samhitas, Brahmanas, or Upanishads. Further, they also come under Aranyaka portion. The 4 categories, Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, could be linked to the 4 ashramas and the 4 purusharthas. The 4 ashramas, that is the stages of life, are Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. And the 4 purusharthas, the goals of life, are Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. So, how they are paired up together? Let us see now. The Samhitas could be linked to the Brahmacharya ashram, and the goal of life in this stage is Artha, meaning studies, learnings, livelihood, means of life. The next portion, the Brahmanas portion, could be linked to the Grihastha-ashrama, and the goals of life in this stage, the emotions, the relationship building, the duty. The third portion, the Aranyaka, could be linked to the 3rd stage of life, which is the Vanaprastha-ashrama. And the goal of life in this stage is Dharma, the piety, the morality, the values, the detachment, etc. The last portion, the Upanishads, could be linked to the last stage of life, the last ashrama, which is Sannyasa ashrama. Also, the Sannyasa ashrama is the concluding stage of the Vanaprastha ashrama. The goal sought after at this stage of life is moksha. Moksha means complete freedom. the ultimate self-realization. So this is how the four portions of the Vedam are connected to the four ashramas and the four purusharthas. Isn't it beautiful how Vedas are intertwined with our lives and every stage? At a broader level, we have yet another categorization called as Shrutis, Smritis, Puranas, and Itihasas. What exactly are Shruti and Smriti? Shruti literally means that which has been heard. Smriti is that which has been remembered. These sacred teachings were not written down but were learned by heart and constantly repeated. As we said earlier, it's an oral tradition. Students still learn the Shruti in the same way as their forefathers learnt it thousands of years ago. The Vedas were handed down orally from one generation to another, and there is this unbroken tradition of Guru Shishya Parampara. In this tradition, the knowledge is imparted, and there were no writing instruments then. Do you know what is our most remarkable achievement? It is the preservation of the Vedas. To be able to keep such a literary wealth as vast as Vedas intact with its understanding and meaning when there were no writing medium or writing material then. Despite it, the Vedas and the understanding has remained intact across thousands of generations of people. This is our greatest achievement. Now let us see some points about the Rig Veda. It is the earliest of the Vedas with a collection of 1028 hymns, 1028 hymns, and it is also the oldest literary heritage of the entire mankind. Many of these hymns are beautiful descriptions of nature, gods and goddess forms. Many rishis received this knowledge. Some of the names of those rishis are Vasishtha, Gautama, Vamadeva, Vishwamitra, Atri. And these rishis, when they were in an exalted state of union with God, these Vedic chants were received by them. And they further taught it to their shishyas, their students, the disciples. These are basically prayers seeking worldly prosperity and development of cultured society. And going back to the god forms in detail, some of the god forms hailed in the Rig Veda are Indra, Agni, Varuna, Rudra, Aditya, and the twins Ashwini Kumaras, and Usha, which means the dawn, and Vak, which means the speech, and Prithvi, the earth. So we even pray to these as gods and goddesses, these nature. And the Rig Veda speaks of higher values, truthfulness, honesty, dedication, sacrifice, politeness, and culture in the Rig Veda. We also get an idea of the way of life, the social, political, and economic conditions of ancient Bharat. Coming next is Yajur Veda. We see some key facts about Yajur Veda here. The word Yajur means sacrifice. Basically, fire sacrifices and the various forms of worship. It is mainly concerned with the procedures, rites and rituals, mantras for different types of sacrifices. There are two branches to Yajur Veda. They are Krishna Yajur Veda and Shukla Yajur Veda. The Yajur Veda basically gives direction and guidance for the performance of the various different fire sacrifices. Yajur Veda reflects the social and religious conditions of Bharat at that point in time. This Veda, being a treatise on rituals and their performances, how to go about doing them, it is also one of the most popular of the four Vedas. Next comes the Samaveda. The Samaveda is derived from the Sanskrit word, the root word saman. Saman means melody. It's a collection of melodies. Most of the Samaveda verses are borrowed actually from the Rig Veda. These were meant to be sung at the time of the performance of yajna or the fire sacrifice towards the end. 16,000 ragas or musical notes originated from this Samaveda. Out of the total 1,875 verses, only 75 originally belongs to Samaveda. The rest all are borrowed and adapted from the Rig Veda. When we say adapted, we mean in Rig Veda they are chanted in a certain way with certain intonations. In Samaveda, they are rendered in a sing-song way. It prescribes the tunes for the recitation of the hymns of the Rig Veda. Samaveda may be called as a book of chants. The Samaveda is an evidence of the development of an Indian music system during those very early times. If Rig Veda is for the word, Samaveda is for the song. Next comes the fourth Veda. It is known as Atharva Veda. It is also called as Brahma Veda. The source of this Veda is traced to two rishis. They are Atharva and Angiras. The chants here represent the religious ideas at an early period of Indian civilization. It has two branches, just like how the Yajur Veda has Shukla and Krishna. The two branches are Paipalada and Shaunaka. It has cures for 99 diseases. The medical science as prevalent at that point in time in the ancient India have been very well documented in this Atharva Veda. This Atharva Veda contains detailed information about the family, social, political life during the later Vedic era, because Atharva Veda comes under one of the later Vedic period, unlike the Yajur Veda or the Rig Veda. Now let's look at the Vedangas, what we call as Shadangas. Shad means 6, Angas means limbs. Now, in order to understand the Vedas, it is very necessary to learn these Shadangas, Vedangas. They are 6 in number, as I just now told you. Anga means, a limb or a part of a body. Veda Purusha is said to have the Chandas as his 2 feet, Kalpa as his 2 arms, Jyotisha or his eyes, Nirukta as his 2 ears, Shiksha his nose, and Vyakarana is his mouth. Shiksha, phonetics or education. Vyakarana represents grammar. Kalpa means the religious ritual. Chandas, the prosody or the meter. Nirukta, the etymology or the glossary. And the 6th and the last one is Jyotisha, the astrology and astronomy. Now there is this mantra which helps us to remember these 6 limbs, the Shadangas. Shiksha Kalpo Vyakaranam, Niruktam Chandasam Chaya, Jyotisha Mayanam Chaiva, Vedangani Shad Evatu. Shiksha and Chandas aids in pronouncing and reciting Vedic mantras correctly. Vyakarana and Nirukta are for understanding their meaning. And Jyotisha and Kalpa provide appropriate times and methods for performing the Vedic sacrificial rites and rituals. The Vedangas play a very important role in maintaining the purity and integrity of the Vedic tradition. For centuries, they taught and continue to teach Vedic students how to recite the Vedic hymns, understand their meaning, and perform the various rituals and ceremonies strictly according to the established procedures. The Vedangas greatly help us in proper understanding and application of the Vedas. Now let's go to Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishad. The word Samhita literally means put together or a methodical collection. The Samhitas are nothing but hymns and mantras. The Brahmanas contain the instruction on the performance of rituals. Now, the concluding part of the Brahmanas are called as Aranyakas, and the concluding part of the Aranyakas are called as Upanishads. This is how these four classifications play out. Now, the Samhitas and Brahmanas can be classified under Karma Kanda, and the later sections, the Aranyakas and the Upanishads, can be classified under the Jnana Kanda. Now, coming back to these four, they all primarily deal with the meaning, application, science and philosophy behind Vedic rituals and sacrifices. They give detail about the socio-political and religious life during that time. Aranyaka. Now, the root word for Aranyaka is Aranya. Aranya means forest. And the Aranyaka section basically deal with the soul, birth and death, and life beyond death. So these were basically studied and taught by the sages and saints living inside deep forest. So that's where the word Aranya, forest, comes into relevance. The Brahmana portion of the Vedas consists of directions about rituals and explains how to perform these rituals, in which these mantras, these samhitas are recited. So that's how you can understand how samhitas and brahmanas go together in chanting and performing, which is basically karma kanda. Now comes the last part in detail, the Upanishad. Upanishads play a vital role in the development of spiritual ideas in ancient India, marking a transition from Vedic ritualism to Vedic philosophy. All four Vedas have Samhitas, Brahmanas, Upanishads and Aranyakas attached to each of them. Rig Veda has Kaushitaki and Atreya, and Taitreya belongs to Krishna Yajur Veda, and Shukla Yajur Veda has Shakpat. Panchvish and Jaiminiya, they all belong to Atharva Veda. Now, little more about this Vedanta, that is Upanishads. Upanishads are also called as Vedanta. Veda Anta, that is end of the Veda. Why did they have this word Vedanta? Because they reveal the final aim of the Veda. The Vedas, those start with Karma Kanda, but eventually they lead you towards the philosophy of life, which is Jnana Kanda. They start with Samhitas and Brahmanas, teach you how to do karma and rituals, with the objective that you proceed towards the philosophy and the final aim of life, which is Jnana Kanda, which is presented under Aranyakas and Upanishads. So, coming back to the Upanishads, they reveal the final aim of the Veda. Secondly, they denote the last phase of the Vedic period chronologically. And our nation's motto, Satyameva Jayate, is actually taken from the Mundakopanishad. Mundakopanishad is one of the 10 most popular Upanishads. We call as Dashopanishad. Now let's talk about Shruti, Smritis, Puranas and Itihasas. We will be touching upon the sutras later. Shruti is solely of divine origin. Vedic chants come under this category, Shruti. They are preserved and taught as they are received. Shruti, the word Shruti literally means that which has been heard. They deal with the eternal principles. Next comes Smritis. Smritis are necessarily towards understanding and interpreting the oral traditions. And the word Smriti literally means that which has been remembered. Smritis deal with the practical application of Shrutis, that is, eternal principles. So, this is the difference between Shruti and Smriti. Next in this list, the Puranas. The Puranas consist of historical stories and allegories composed for better outreach of the traditions. And the last in this list is Itihasa. The word Itihasa splits as Iti ha asa, means thus verily happened. Therefore, Itihasa means history as it truly happened. Itihasas are poetic expressions of historical events. We have already talked about two great itihasas, the epics. The two great epics, what are they? Yeah, they are Ramayana and Mahabharata. Unlike the present day, during earlier times, that is before 200 years ago, before the British came, for tens of thousands of years, the sages in this land recorded history so that the future generations could benefit from that learnings. The Ramayana of Valmiki and the Mahabharata by sage Vedvyasa are all itihasas. These are poetic expressions, right? So these are composed in an epic format. Epic means poetry. What makes poetry more appealing is it makes it easy for people to listen, learn, understand and repeat after. So poetries help in preservation of the history. So that's why the earlier sages went for this format, the poetry format. Now let's come back to sutras. Sutras are concise and crisp corollaries composed by sages to hand down knowledge effectively. Now let's look at one of the sutra, a famous one, Baudhayana Sulva Sutra. Today it is popularly known as Pythagoras theorem. Baudhayana Sulva Sutra came about 1000 years before Common Era. Baudhayana Sulva Sutra states the diagonal of a rectangle produces by itself both the areas produced separately by its two sides. Now, what is the date of this Baudhayana Sulva Sutra? It is at least 1000 years before Common Era. Compared to that, what is the date of the Pythagoras theorem? It is 500 to 490 years before Common Era. So you can imagine how ancient our knowledge is. This knowledge is not only for gaining material wealth. It is also about science, mathematics, and the very ultimate final philosophy. Now to wrap up this section about the Vedas. It is very difficult to determine the age of the Vedas. The near accurate that the historians and researchers like Lokmanya Tilak, they have determined it to be 6000 years before Common Era. Vedavyasa classified the contents, assigned 4 groups of people to nurture and hand it down to the subsequent generations using oral tradition through the many Gurukulas. There was a time when there was 700,000 Gurukulas dotting the entire length and breadth of this land called Bharat. The written tradition of teaching started only in the recent centuries. The Sanskrit language itself was a derivation from Vedas. Now we have come to the close of this section about Vedas. I'm sure you also enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking about it. Let's move to the next section. Sai Ram.